Wes, good to see you. This is must-watch viewing for anybody who is invested in the markets. We're going to share some tips for how to protect your retirement savings if markets plunge. If you are within 5 years of retiring, either before or after, you are at your most vulnerable financially. Retiring in a down market, though, presents some very unique challenges known as sequence of returns risk. Can you explain that one for us?
Yes, this is a big topic and something that every pre-retiree and retiree should be aware of and consider. So, sequence of returns risk is the risk that you take, especially early on in retirement. If there are bad or negative rates of return early on in your retirement, then that can really affect the success of your plan long term when you look out 10, 20, 30 plus years. And the reason for that is that if we have bad rates of return early on and we're taking money out of the market, then that's a compounding effect and your money can really struggle to recover. So retirees, over the last 5 years have been through some crazy events, right? Whether it was COVID, that was a quick thing, but lots of uncertainty. And then you get into 2022, and that was the whole interest rate story for
Mhm.
those that felt like, they should be doing the right thing by being diversified. And we'll talk more about that, I'm sure. But every asset class struggled. So those retirees had to have some unique things in their portfolio to help combat that. But it is a topic, it's a concern that we want to be sure that we're addressing on the front end to be proactive instead of reactive.
Right. So now let's talk through those tips then. Number one is build a cash cushion.
So those that plan properly, and I know life can happen and you don't always reach these goals, but if you can, when you're retired, having a year's worth of living expenses on the sideline for any purpose, whether that be cash flow needs in a down market, it can become a buffer account that can provide you a little bit of flexibility to where you don't have to pull out of your market-based accounts, but maybe use that buffer account to tap into while things recover in the market, or if an emergency comes up, whether that's the HVAC blows out or an emergency with the family, maybe your kids need some assistance and you want to help them out. That's a good kind of bucket to dip into for that rainy day fund. The what if, who knows when it's going to happen. And it's kind of a matter of, or who knows if, right? But it's just a matter of when, because life certainly does happen.
hmm Next, you suggest consider changing the balance of equities and fixed investments in your portfolio. Again, this is a delicate balance because you still need enough money invested in equities to combat inflation. And now I think is when you're going to talk about the yucky bonds that we saw in 2022.
Yeah, that's right. And again, whether it's investing more in bonds or less in bonds or more in stocks or less in stocks, we never want to get into a situation where we're trying to time the market. We might get
Right.
lucky once or twice, but that's kind of a loser's fallacy there. But it's more about the structure of our investments. So again, coupled with your plan, what rate of return do you need? What is your risk tolerance versus your risk capacity? Meaning, what can your plan withstand? There are certain strategies, whether it's things like annuities, those can be a great fit for some people, guaranteed income and so forth. Or in today's world, you can utilize some buffer funds that are designed to help your portfolio stay invested through good markets and bad
Mhm.
markets. But those buffer funds can help absorb some of the market downturn while still having an opportunity to participate in some upside. So again, that's good structure. But that mix is different for everybody. It's not a straightforward answer.
Right. It may change year to year. Good point. And you may also want to adjust your spending. Is this another way of saying to adjust your withdrawal rate?
Well, if you can have a more dynamic spending strategy, maybe you've got an amount in mind that is going to cover your core living expenses. And then if there's good years in the market, perhaps we take some of the winners off the table and use that opportunity to do those really fun trips or those big trips, right? Doing those trips across the pond and going to Europe and so forth, where that's maybe 20 or 25 grand. But being able to be a little bit flexible is an advantage because nobody knows, when these bad times are going to happen. But at least having your core covered, that's really important as far as your core lifestyle expenses.
Mm. And as painful as it might be, you might need to work a little bit longer, which of course can help with income, but also delaying when you claim Social Security.
Sure. So even if it's 6 months, working 6 months longer, certainly anything over a year is going to be a dramatic assistance to your plan because you're probably contributing to a 401k and even saving more. But this is a delicate balance. We really try to, again, be really proactive with the planning so that we test for certain things because we don't want you to go back to work unless you really want to. And
Yeah.
that's more of a lifestyle choice, a freedom choice of saying, I love what I do. I want to work longer. But if it's a scenario where you're working longer, you're working harder, you're adding stress, it's not good for your health. Well, that's something that's hard to quantify because
Mhm.
obviously life is never guaranteed, and it's all about enjoying the years that you do have. So making the most of what you can with the resources that you have is really important.
I'm going to work in the library when I'm retired.
There you go. Get
That's
back.
fine. All right. Last, speaking with a fiduciary advisor can help ensure that you retire when you want on your terms. An advisor can also design a plan tailored to your goals and designed to protect against this volatility and, again, the sequence risk that we talked about at the beginning.
One of the biggest values that I find, even when I'm talking to my peers in the industry with my own planning, is let's face it, an outside fiduciary advisor comes things from a factual standpoint, takes emotions into consideration, but they aren't tied to our money like we are naturally to our own money, that is. So I find a lot of value in that, just being able to bounce ideas off someone, have a second opinion, and perhaps discuss things that I haven't thought about, right? So that can be a really big value for those that are going through the planning process, and that's an ongoing thing. It should be revisited at a minimum once per year. But we obviously, with our clients, we encourage every 6 months having that conversation, that check-in point to make sure things are still on track and that life hasn't changed too much.
Well, for anybody who's watching who wants to make sure that they are well prepared no matter what the market does next, how can they reach you?
You can reach us at 919-322-4113 or send us a message, info@patriotwealthnc.com.
Okay. Wes, thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.